Don't scream. Put that shit down. You remember me?
The Last of Us Part 2 is a dreadful experience in all the best ways. From the moment the game begins to the second the credits roll, I was taken on a ride that tore me apart emotionally and mentally. There's no happiness here to enjoy. Instead, the game is a dark and somber experience that fills you with constant anxiety. Everything from the world to the story and its characters manages to elevate the original game's setting to a new level.
She kissed me. It was just Dina being Dina. She didn't mean anything by it.
I was talking about your fight with Seth. Wait, you kissed Dina?
Oh. I thought this...
We're broken up 1 week and you make a move on my girl?
The story is a heartbreaking tale that questions your own humanity as you fight through dark thoughts about the characters you meet along the way. Never have I ever experienced so many conflicting emotions in a video game before. I went from absolutely despising a character to rooting for them more than others. Naughty Dog manages to answer so many questions left at the end of the first game, while at the same time taking you on a brand new journey of self-discovery. Throughout the game, you meet and interact with new characters that leave a lasting impression. At the same time, you experience this through a handful of interwoven plot lines that merge together in surprising and unexpected ways. However, the story in The Last of Us Part 2 has some weak points, with underdeveloped characters, forcefully digested LGBT themes, and some cliché and predictable outcomes. While it is far from perfect, the game hands the player a fleshed out world to explore and delivers an experience that has evolved from the original game. The same can be said for the gameplay, which manages to improve on so many aspects while at the same time deliver new ways to approach it. Crafting on the go is still as fluid as ever, moment-to-moment combat is intense, and sneaking mechanics have received some much-needed attention. Not to mention the game's locations and hubs are now bigger, offering more ways to approach every combat encounter. Everything in The Last of Us Part 2 has received some spit and polish, and while some story arcs are weak and the overall plot has some major pacing issues, the game is unlike anything you'll experience. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of The Last of Us Part 2 review, it is important to note that the NDA with Sony and Naughty Dog prevents me from mentioning some key features of the game. This includes non-spoiler gameplay arcs, and even some key locations you visit, which helps elevate the flow of the game even more. The Last of Us Part 2 takes Ellie on a journey into Seattle to track down a group of dangerous people. While there's a lot more that's going on, I can't say much more. The game takes place 5 years after the original, but every now and then it flashes back to that dreadful day when Joel massacred the Fireflies in order to save Ellie from being sacrificed as a cure for the world-ending plague. Ellie now has a girlfriend named Dina, and they live happily in Jackson with Joel and hundreds of other survivors. During the first few hours of the game, I was given comfort that society was functioning as much as possible in this town. However, things go south pretty fast, and Ellie heads towards Seattle along with Dina in order to find this group of people called the Wolves. As the story expands, so does the discovery that Seattle is in the middle of a war between the Wolves and a cult known as the Seraphites. Not to mention the cordyceps virus that destroyed the world is still a threat. This means that the infected are back and deadlier than ever. They have evolved to a certain extent too. Most of the time, whatever you're doing in The Last of Us Part 2, you always feel alone in the world against everything else. This makes exploration and the combat daunting. The first few hours of the game acts as a sort of open world-like hub where Ellie and Dina can explore a range of buildings in an abandoned city centre. Some buildings have puzzles to solve, like a safe to crack,
What have you got for me?
or a group of clickers to defeat. This in a way acts as the game's tutorial, throwing every possible scenario at the player to give them a taste of what is to come. Just like much of the game's optional objectives and buildings, it also offers rewards like new weapons, crafting materials, and collectibles. It was a great way to set up the gameplay for what is to come. Exploration is vital to surviving in The Last of Us Part 2. Sometimes exploring can be your downfall, as every dark and abandoned building is not as empty as it seems. Instead, you would fall into a dark basement filled with infected and be forced to survive the onslaught. This is where combat comes into play. Most scenarios in the game can be approached in two ways. You can go all silent and deadly and take enemies down one by one. Clickers can kill you instantly, so sneaking up on them and shivving them is the best bet. Ellie no longer needs to craft shivs for her combat, as her trusted pocket knife does the job. However, every combat encounter benefits from the new smarter AI challenging you at every turn. No matter how much ammo or crafted gear Ellie has at her disposal, The Last of Us Part 2 proves that life is fragile. I had to be smart with every single move I made. If I was planting an explosive trap and then tossing a bottle nearby to get the infected to come close, I had to take into account that I would not be able to kill them all with my pistol. Sometimes I went shotgun mad only to die to a clicker that came running through a crack in the wall behind me. I spent much of my time hiding behind a table using R1 to listen through the walls for that glowing outline of enemies. It's frightening to say the least. Where the AI has seen a drastic improvement is with the human enemies. Firstly, every enemy now has a name, and it is quite dramatic to hear their friends scream it when they see him or her die in front of them. This feature sort of gives the game a sense of humanity, and you kind of feel bad for a second or two. The same sneaking approach can be taken with human enemies, however they are a lot smarter than they look. Ellie can slide under trucks, but stay there too long and the AI will pull you out. You can also prone in tall grass, but if they come close they will spot you. Sneaking is heart racing, and taking down an enemy silently after they've pleaded for their life is intense. Ellie is able to craft Molotov cocktails, smoke bombs, explosive arrows, and other equipment to help their approach to the encounter. However, no matter how kitted out Ellie is, the game is tough, and when an enemy sees you, they want you dead. Shootouts between factions can get dicey. When Ellie is shot, she falls onto her back, and the kick of the enemy's gun makes the experience even more intense. Enemies don't just sit in one spot either. If they know you're aiming at their cover, they will sneak around to another vantage point and try and shoot you. The talk between them while hunting you down also adds to the tension. The Seraphites insist on whistling to each other to communicate. The sudden loud noises often made me jump while I was sneaking up behind someone, and if all else failed, I could just melee someone to death thanks to Ellie's ability to craft enhanced weapons that deal more damage. With that being said, even those fights can get a little dicey if I did not dodge at the right time or went up against a brute wielding a massive mallet. I would not go as far as to say the AI enemies are groundbreakingly smart, however the small improvements make combat feel like nothing I've played before. A new type of infected called the Shambler is an armored creature that shoots out poisonous gas when you get close. They can also toss balls of exploding poison if you are spotted. The infected are often a lot easier to get through than humans. This is thanks to the multiple ways you can kill large groups of them, including fires or just putting shotgun shells into them. By about midway through the game, Ellie is kitted out with a load of weapons. These can be upgraded using weapon stations found throughout the game. As you search houses and ruins, Ellie finds materials that can be spent to purchase a scope for a rifle, extra magazine space for your pistol, and much more. The crafting system is basic, but the improvements can be felt in every encounter. At one stage, you can even make fire shotgun shells. I love the way the crafting took place though. Ellie places the gun on the counter, and you can see her unscrewing the barrel and putting a new one on. It's a new level of immersion in the experience and a small detail that makes a world of difference. Ellie can also upgrade abilities which you unlock by finding training manuals throughout the game. These skill trees are often disjointed in each tree and don't follow a set path. Being able to craft improved health kits, the fire shotgun shells, and even increasing the listening distance and move speed while sneaking. Skills are unlocked by spending the pills that you find throughout the game, especially in bathrooms. The Last of Us Part 2's combat is okay. I won't say that by the end of the game I was enjoying it as much as I did when I started. It kind of got dated very fast. Other than that one encounter when I was able to let loose some infected on my enemies, it does not evolve enough to keep you on the edge of your seats. Nothing changes to make the endgame encounters different from the starting ones. Sure, enemies have better weapons, but 20 hours in, I kinda got tired of sneaking around and taking enemies down one by one. I just ended up going into every encounter guns blazing. It was faster and much more entertaining. With that being said though, I'm sure the tougher game difficulties would offer ways to force you into specific playstyles. The same can be said for general exploration. The game puts a large emphasis on exploring every nook and cranny. It is important as you need the materials, collectibles, and skill points to survive the game. However, running around an empty building, opening cabinets, and spamming the triangle button to collect everything kinda gets dated after 20 hours of doing it. Thankfully, the world is gorgeous thanks to the breathtaking landscapes and great sound design. It was the only thing that kept me going at times. I had my headphones on, and the rain trickling off the trees and Ellie's footsteps throughout the puddles of water really added to the experience. The world of The Last of Us Part 2 is unlike anything I've explored. The ruins of Seattle and every other location you visit throughout the game have been carefully crafted to the utmost detail. Not to mention the game's visuals are stunning, and it has some of the best use of HDR to date. It makes the mindless running around easier on the eyes at least. The Last of Us Part 2 wants to tell a unique story and succeeds for the most part. There's a lot going on when it comes to the game's narrative, and most of the time it works. I always say that a good story is a good story regardless of how diverse it's trying to be. Sure, a lot of themes in The Last of Us Part 2 could have been left out. Often it comes across as an afterthought even. Ellie's relationship with Dina felt like it was being shoved down my throat. Often it does not add to the focus of the game and chapter and comes across poorly delivered. With that being said, the plot in general was weak. I feel as if the game delivers this immersive world with new locations, factions and characters, but it is washed out by Ellie. Perhaps Neil Druckmann did not get enough time to flesh it out. It is a shame. The game's best parts in my opinion are overshadowed by Ellie. There are better characters and better story arcs in The Last of Us Part 2 to experience. However, Naughty Dog does not want me to speak about them. While the game manages to do service to existing characters and introduce some fantastic new ones, it is the new ones I cared about more. Unfortunately, Ellie's one-note personality and drive gets in the way of enjoying them, not to mention the rushed final act feels slapped together. Naughty Dog's questionable marketing for The Last of Us Part 2 makes you believe that one thing is happening in the game, however that is not the case. There's a lot more to love here than what meets the eye. While the game's plot has some major holes in it that never actually go anywhere, the gameplay has seen some major improvements. It is one of the most visually captivating games on the market at times, and I could not believe it was running on the hardware. It is a game that you will want to play, even if it's once. It will play with your emotions and deliver some intense inner conflict, something that the series is known for. It is just a pity that the plot was trying so hard to be outstanding, and it often felt rushed and forgettable. But that's all our thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. There is a lot more going on in this game that we wish we could have discussed with you today, but some NDAs prevented that. What do you guys think of it so far? Let us know down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing, and until next time, farewell.